Last week, the big names at the running back position weren't playing no games. Christian McCaffrey, he dropped 24 fantasy points. Jonathan Taylor, an impressive 32.8 fantasy points. And all James Cook does is score touchdowns, earning himself a 20.8 fantasy performance. Here are RotoBaller's must-start and sit options for week number 4 at the running back position. And we start things off with J.K. Dobbins of the Denver Broncos as they take on the Cincinnati Bengals. With 222 rushing yards through 3 weeks, Dobbins is low-key producing. That rushing total, it ranks 7th in the National Football League, and the 15.2 fantasy points per game he's currently averaging has him placed as an RB1 throughout the early part of the season. Amongst running backs heading into Monday Night Football, Dobbins sat tied for 2nd in rushing touchdowns with 3, 7th in rushing yards with 222, and 5th in yards per carry amongst backs with at least 25 attempts. Now, we all know that both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs went off for a pair of touchdowns each and over 200 yards combined. Now, Dobbins, he has been consistent after posting fantasy finishes of 14.8 and 15.5 fantasy points in each of the first 2 weeks. Dobbins, he then followed that up with a 15.3 fantasy point performance against a stout Chargers run defense, carrying the ball on 11 occasions for 83 yards and a touchdown, averaging 7.5 yards per carry. This week, Dobbins has the potential to be the overall RB1 with a date against that Bengals team who, through 3 weeks, have been absolutely gouged for 331 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. They have also conceded 131 yards to backs on 14 receptions. The rushing and receiving yards allowed are amongst the worst in the league and sit inside the bottom 7 in both categories. The yards against is a significant reason why the Bengals are allowing a league-high 30.07 fantasy points per game thus far. Another running back that I'm firing up this week, how about Ashton Jeanty of the Las Vegas Raiders as they take on the Chicago Bears? Right now, Jeanty's rushing total ranks 22nd in the league, and he trails fellow rookie Quinshon Judkins by 11 yards. And Judkins, he's only played in 2 games. The Las Vegas Raiders offensive line has looked out of sorts since the beginning of the season, and Jeanty enters week number 4 with 145 yards rushing on 47 carries and an average of 3.1 yards per attempt. Now, the good news, despite being hit at or before the line of scrimmage on 57% of his carries, Jeanty has 143 of his 147 yards coming after contact. And after a slow start against the Commanders, Jeanty would finish the game with 63 yards on the ground. In week 4, Las Vegas faces the Chicago Bears team that surrendered 7.6 yards per carry to Javonte Williams last week. The Dallas running back, he churned out 72 yards on the ground and caught 5 passes. And in 3 games this season, Chicago has allowed 363 yards rushing, 2 backs on 68 carries, and average of 5.3 yards per attempt. They've also allowed the 6th most fantasy points to the position, 28.87 per game. Now, another running back that I'm firing up this week, how about Omarion Hampton of the Los Angeles Chargers as they take on the New York Giants? Like Jeanty, Omarion Hampton, he has struggled this season, averaging 3.38 yards per carry, resulting in 142 rushing yards, ranking 23rd. While Jeanty, he has forced 12 missed tackles this season, Hampton, he's only forced 5 missed tackles on 5 fewer rushing attempts. Hampton, he was on the do not start until further notice list, but thanks to a respectable outing against the Broncos in which he ran for 70 yards and a touchdown, not to mention his 6 receptions there for 59 yards, Hampton is an option once again. It is funny how a 24.9 fantasy point performance changes things. Now, historically, teams going from the west to the east have gotten off to slow starts, and the Chargers, they have been notorious for this. Hopefully Hampton, who played his college ball at North Carolina, can avoid falling victim to a slow start, as this matchup is one of those matchups that you can build on from a week ago. This week's opponent is the New York Giants, a team that has allowed 441 total yards to running backs this season and 26.27 fantasy points per game to the position, the 4th most. That averages up to 1.01 fantasy points per touch. Now, how are those running backs that I'm sitting? I'm going to start things off with Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts as they take on the Los Angeles Rams. Taylor's fantasy production, it has been impressive this season. The Colts back has 338 yards rushing this season and has posted back-to-back 100-yard contests, with the latest one resulting in 3 touchdowns. Now, it's easy to say start your studs and bench those RB4 tier-type players in fantasy football, but I feel like getting a little spicy here this week. while this isn't a full-out sit Taylor, it is a proceed with caution as the number one running back in fantasy faces a defense that just held Saquon Barkley to 46 yards rushing and 2.6 yards per carry a week ago. Before that contest, Barkley had been averaging 17.9 fantasy points per game. The Rams defense has yet to concede a touchdown to the running back position through 3 weeks and has allowed just 215 yards rushing and 26 yards receiving. When you add that all up when it comes to fantasy, you get the league's most formidable defense when facing opposing backs. A defense that is allowing a league best 9.37 fantasy points per game, the only defense allowing less than 12 fantasy points per game to the position. Another sit this week is Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the Lions, as they take on the Cleveland Browns. Yes, I watched Monday Night Football. I watched both these backs go off. I watched them score multiple touchdowns, but this is not the game to get them going here this week. In week one, the Lions duo of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they fell victim to the Packers defense that brought pressure all night long. The Ravens, they didn't bring any pressure. The Packers defense was able to limit Montgomery and Gibbs on the ground, holding the backs to a combined 44 yards rushing total. Montgomery averaged 2.3 yards per attempt, while Gibbs was limited to 2.1 yards per attempt. As good as that Packers defense is, the Cleveland Browns defense may be even better. Micah Parsons' presence is all anyone wants to talk about, but people, have they really forgotten just how good Myles Garrett is? Garrett, he already has 3.5 sacks this season, and he is a game changer in every way, shape, and form. Parsons, he affected that contest on basically 60% of what he's able to do. What can Myles Garrett do at 100%? Let's look back at what the Browns defense has done to this point, shall we? The 128 rushing yards allowed this season to the running back position, that is the fewest in the NFL. In week number 1, Chase Brown disappointed fantasy managers, rushing for just 43 yards on 20 attempts against this Browns unit. Then in week 2, it was Derrick Henry's turn, where Browns held Henry to 2.1 yards per carry on his 11 rushing attempts. And last week, Josh Jacobs, he was held in check, running for 30 yards on 19 carries. There is a good reason why this Browns team sits second in fantasy points allowed to opposing backs. There's a good chance that history repeats itself this week, and the Browns add a couple more notches to their. And the final sit of the week is Travis Etienne Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars as they take on the San Francisco 49ers. The urge to put Christian McCaffrey on this list was difficult to resist. Consider the Jaguars have yet to allow a touchdown to a running back this season, and their 14 fantasy points allowed as a team to the position, it happens to be the 4th fewest. However, with Jonathan Taylor on the list already, it didn't really seem wise to get too hot-takey. While Travis Etienne did manage to find the end zone a week ago, he did lose out on a goal line carry to Tootin there early on, which the rookie converted into 6 points. It may mean something, heck, it may not. It's too early to tell. What else was suggestive was the fact that Etienne finished today with just 56 yards rushing and failed to record a single reception. Scoring, it could be an issue this week. I know Nick Bosa was lost for the 49ers, but the 49ers, they've allowed just 1 touchdown to opposing backs this season and are allowing just 16.38 fantasy points on a per-game basis to the position this year. Between a tough defense and sharing the backfield with a back who has yet to take a negative play, Etienne could be losing some touches sooner rather than later. And if you haven't already done so, hit that like and follow button. Make sure to head over to RotoBaller.com for all the latest news and fantasy analysis. We'll see you next time.